Okay, so my second book I wrote around the same time. It was formed through actually a traumatic experience that I had in Mexico. So this is about repetition of patterns and why we have come out to be this way. So this book talks about personal accounts. It talks about my childhood and what happened to me as an adult, and I use myself as an example to basically show the reader what I have learned, what I have encountered as part of a cycle. And these examples also have mirrors of today's world within them, of course. And I talk a little bit about how trauma manifests and what does the human psyche kind of desire to reenact or retain through these states of trauma. It's especially good for people who can't yet fish out their inner child, who have no idea what happened to them. Also people that have suffered trauma too early in their years, so they don't quite yet know how to associate with it. And also for any child that was suppressed and told not to speak and not to voice anything. So this is a very, very deeply psychological book. It is a very, very good book for people that are learning to come to terms with something that has happened, and they also want to surface something about themselves in the here and now that is still happening. So this is very good for raw, fresh trauma wounds and also recurring trauma states. The reason why I have created this book is because I was going through something with somebody romantically in Mexico. It wasn't actually romantic, it was more a cycle of of dissonance. I had a cycle of dissonance in Mexico, and I was wondering what makes me experience these things still. And to get to the point of it, I have created 222 illustrations that were basically a learning aid for me. So the reason why I have done that is because I couldn't get to the point as to why certain things were happening in my life. And through the whole series of drawings, I asked myself, who am I? Or rather, who do I think I am? And what are the different versions of me that are there or that are functioning through me? This also has to do with multiple personality disorders, anything like that, multiple states of consciousness that sometimes take place at once. And the reason is because a person's got disassociation. So I had disassociation for a long time. Dissociative disorders are actually very sometimes weirdly helpful with art and channeling and everything like that, but they can also come to a state of harm, I believe. So this is basically a book of healing. The reason why I decided to put it together is because some of the drawings are actually really cool, and I felt that they were really teaching me and telling me a lot about me and about my world. So here I also illustrate a lot of personal accounts. I go through some people, some names and some experiences that are very personal to my heart. I have not censored any names. I've used all the names in this book, in this story. I've been very open about what has been going on with me, and I've been also very open about the types of confusion or states of disarray and the patternings that I have later in life created through states of disassociation. So this is a very, very useful book for anybody who's also studying trauma and who's helping people with trauma, and for anybody who's trying to understand their own. Also, I've come to understand and recognize that there's not many specialist psychologists and guides that can actually really truly help a person walk out of their trauma completely. There is no quick fix and there is no pill that one can take to really fully reconnect to their core. And as I've been working with this for a long time, also with other people and myself, I kind of realize now that there is no one way to fully walk out of these hereditary patterns and societal patterns, as I've actually come to understand at the end when I was putting this book together, that a lot of this is actually not personal or private. Much of this is societal, and much of it is very, very old. I mean, some of this goes back to like ancient civilizations and the different ways in which people had slaves, and what is slave consciousness and slave DNA within a person, and how come we find ourselves in very unusual situations. So part of the charm of the book is that it talks about past civilizations a little bit, and my predecessors as I have unconsciously depicted them. All the drawings were created in an out of body state, so like all these are psychic drawings, and I only realized what they were telling me after I drew them, which was quite cool. And the likeness to certain people is phenomenal. I didn't think about these people when I drew them, but they came through the page, so that was pretty cool. And the most that I can say about this book is it is a very good tutor and a very good guide in terms of current civilization, current state of consciousness, how things are not perhaps interpreted clearly by many people. People think it's all about me, like it's all about them and what happened to them, and they can't walk out of that cycle because it perpetuates, it becomes them, and they don't even realize it, they don't even aware of it. But because there is a global shift happening at this time as well, maybe there is a global phenomena to all of these different patterns and all these different tribes and all these different sequences. I think it is very easy now to see how certain preconceptions and perhaps societal or demographic patterns have created these stories of harm, and how now it is much easier to see them being out of it. So as I have created this book, I have walked out of that pattern. So because it was a very good guide to me, and I have become so much better off after, through writing this book, I believe it would be probably very helpful to other people. So it really worked for me as a guide, and it probably could really help you. And if you work with art, and if you work with children, if you work with therapies, if you are trying to help other people learn about themselves and others, if you're trying to make new guides and new ways of helping the trauma shine through without being really harsh on the person. I mean, this is one of the greatest guides in terms of learning how to purge trauma and how to adjust oneself without having to re-traumatize oneself. So yeah, it was a very good guide to me. So
kissing each wave as it brushes me out of the blue.